Hello and welcome to The View from Felaban. I'm Silvia Pavoni, economics editor of The Banker, and I'm talking with the chief economist of Santander Brasil, Mauricio Molan. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
So I want to ask you obviously about Brazil. The country is now having a new president. Jair Bolsonaro has been recently elected and will take office soon. His program has not been about economics, we know. He's been talking more about security, and he seems to have been outsourcing the economic plan to his finance minister, Paulo Guedes, who's really made a very good job in convincing markets about the need for reforms and for a bigger private sector. He has been talking in long roadshows about the two Ps, privatization and the pension reforms, right? So what are we going to actually see coming out of this government?
That's right. I think this government have been doing a great job in indicating they have as a priority the fiscal adjustment and the social security reform. Mr. Bolsonaro has a good group of advisors, and they are basically going to detail those plans in coming weeks, and they are going to appoint very good names for the economic team. So we expect they to come up with a very good social security reform and a fiscal adjustment to bring the primary deficit into a surplus already in 2020. This may be enough to sustain the recovery of Brazilian assets and the improvement of confidence on Brazil.
So this is all very positive, and we're seeing a sort of detachment perhaps from politics and between politics and economics. A lot of people outside of Brazil perhaps are concerned about the often controversial statements and high tones of President-elect Bolsonaro, but you're convinced that from an economic point of view and the market's point of view, things will work out.
Yeah, that's right. This fiscal reform for Brazil is urgent. And for this fiscal reform to be accomplished, the new government will need Congress. So Mr. Bolsonaro and his team will have to compromise and will have to be moderate in terms of their speeches and in terms of their approaches regarding Congress, the judicial system. So we are not concerned about any type of conflict or any type of problem related to the relationship between Mr. Bolsonaro and the judicial system and the Congress as well.
Although I have to say that when presidents that are seen as controversial, and we have a very clear example in the United States with President Donald Trump, lots of people tend to assume that once in governments, their positions will soften a bit. But we've seen President Trump also going ahead with a lot of the things that he promised during his electoral campaign, right? So from withdrawing from TPP, from the Paris Agreement on climate change, renegotiating NAFTA. So are you actually convinced that there isn't really going to be any meddling between the concerns that lots of people have? So are they right to be concerned outside of Brazil about what Bolsonaro might do?
Yeah, I believe that some degree of concern is justifiable by previous statements. But I think there is a fact, the major difference between the US and Brazil is that Brazil needs to accomplish reforms. Brazil needs to change constitution, needs to impose, to create new laws, particularly for the accomplishment of the fiscal adjustment. And for that, Bolsonaro will need political support from the population and from Congress. Therefore, he cannot go into conflict. He will have to compromise.
Okay. And lastly, and very quickly, our audience obviously is made of predominantly of banks. And with the finance minister, he's really keen to make pretty much all corporations in the whole of Brazil much more efficient. Do you think that we're going to see also some changes within the country's two big, massive state-owned banks, Banco do Brasil and Caixa Econômica Federal?
That's correct. In Brazil, 50% of banking sector assets belongs to public-owned institutions. So they are very important for the competitiveness and the equilibrium of the system. And we believe the approach of this government will be to make those public-owned banks very competitive, and as a result, spreads will be compressed and tariffs will be reduced, And this is going to be very good for consumers, for corporations in general, and for society, which will lead to a new cycle of credit expansion in the country.
Very well. Thank you again so much for your comments. So this is the first day of Felaban. We'll see what the rest of the banking community gathered here in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic will be discussing.
Thank you
again.
Thank you very much.